Please support this channel by subscribing and leaving comments. Stay well, stay safe.
The Sasquatch picking up the garbage or whatever. There's a $2,000 fine for that, so you know they got to get it out of there. And I wonder about the kind of mushrooms that were being picked on the outside. And I don't doubt it because I truly believe that I heard one of these sounds myself one day in the back of my friend's truck. I was sleeping, and we live around here, so it's possible. I like a lot of people, I get to the town and move on to other things. The next gentleman we're going to have is Mr. Donald Hepworth, sitting right here on my right. He's the Chief Inspector for the SPCA. He's retired now, and he's been a police officer around here. He says that he has seen the muddy whites of their eyes. And I think this is what the discussion will be on. And I'm going to go and see if I can get some heat on it.
Okay. Thank you. This did not occur in Canada. It occurred in Idaho, the United States, 14 years ago. Now you may say to yourself, what is an expatriate Englishman doing wandering around Idaho looking at Sasquatch? Good question. I am a professional horseman. I raise horses, I train horses, I teach people how to keep the horse between them and the dirt. I do the best I can. And compete with horses, and I'm raising for the first time 2 stallions with a fun hope that they might make it eventually to the Olympic Games. So it brings us back to what was I doing in Idaho. I was in Idaho, frankly, on my honeymoon. I was married twice. I've been married and divorced later. My present wife was with me, and I had been investigating slaughterhouses. Funny way in Vancouver area, and the SPCA had asked me to do that because I was coming out this way, and they said, we will pay your airfare if you go at the time they want you to go. And I said, fine, and I went there, investigated the slaughterhouses, and then carried on to Pullman, Washington, to do a course under the late Professor Pat Farrell, who ran a course on horse identification using the freeze branding method. That is, dipping a branding knife in liquid nitrogen and sticking it on a horse's neck and burning shapes into the horse's neck. It doesn't cause any pain to the horse, little discomfort after no pain. And I've been studying that for 2 or 3 days. And I finished the course, and I still had 3 odd days around. So I said to my wife, let's take a drive around the countryside. And I thought that I might make it as far as Yellowstone Park, and my wife enjoyed that. But after a day's driving, it really came to me that I couldn't possibly make it and get back in time. So we settled for driving around, and we went round the Snake River Canyon. And I didn't realize it before. It's far bigger than the Grand Canyon of Arizona, and deeper, and I was very impressed. So we drove around doing that, sightseeing, and talking to people who met on the road, truck drivers and things. And one of the things that we came upon is a truck driver who told us there was some very nice accommodation at a place called New Meadows. So we made the New Meadows, and when we looked at, frankly, what was a rural slump, we came to the conclusion it was not for us. And I said to my wife, well, the next nearest town of any size is Wisa. We will drive to Wisa. So we set off driving to Wisa, which now is after 5 in the afternoon. It was starting to get dark, and my wife is a registered nurse, by the way. I don't usually know anything about registered nurses, but they have to stand on the rainforest, and when they're not actually nursing or doing things in the house, they sleep. They curl up after they have to sleep. And that's what my wife does. She curls up after they have to sleep. Snores too. But, and thing that I'm always telling you. Anyway, she's lying there, and I'm driving on Louisa. And we drove along the bottom of a creek, and I remember looking at the creek and saying to myself, oh, this is what territory, and all these things through here. They're not catering for tourists in this part of North America at all. And we carried on. We started to gradually climb up this road, which I remember was a two-lane, hard-top road. And we were climbing up this road, and we got to the top, and it just started to get dark. So I flicked on the headlights, not particularly because I needed them, but frankly to let other people know I was there. Because blue road, paved road, then blue cars tend to disappear into which we come hard to see in the dusk. So I was driving along, musing to myself, and I said, oh look, here are two kids from a ranch. And they are Negro kids, and they're waiting across the road, waiting across the road. And then the thought hit me, I have been driving all day in this part of the world, and I have not seen a Negro person. I have seen Indians, and I have seen white men, and I haven't seen too much of the latter. So why is it two Negro kids on the side of the road? And I slowed down even more so, and they started to walk across the road. And it occurred to me, they were not Negro kids. They were covered in black hair. We walked upright. The two of them, a female, walked in front, and a larger, heavier set male walked behind. They both walked with a bent knee sort of gait. They did not straighten their legs and swing their arms like guardsmen. They swung their arms okay, but they swung arms in a very undisciplined manner. If you call, right at the back of your hand and swing forward first. The next knot, and the next knot. So they're kind of undisciplined that way. And the knees were bent, and they walked from left to right to front. Halfway across, the male stopped and turned and looked at me. And I got the impression if I carried on and hit it with the front of the car was going to disintegrate. I've seen cars that hit a deer weighing 150 pounds, and they're wrecked. It's at least $1,000 worth of body weight. So I feathered the brakes a little more with my foot and looked at this creature, and he was so thick-set, he had to turn his trunk to look at me. He couldn't turn from his weight. He looked at me, and he had a big, thick neck. Again, he couldn't turn his head very much. So he looked at me, and that's when I noticed his eyes were not white. They were a muddy brown. Now, if you go to the Sudan, in Africa, and you talk to inhabitants there, locals there, you find they've got black eyes. They don't have whites to their eyes, they have white. And if you meet people in the Caribbean, whose ancestors originally came from Africa, and they came back, it's a genetic trait. They've got brown, muddy eyes too. In fact, the man who drove my bus to the airport at 4:30 the other morning, he had brown, muddy eyes, and I made a point of asking him which island he came from, the Caribbean. And he told me he came from the Alpha Martinique, which is very interesting. And so I looked at this thing. The female had carried on walking, and he brought her up in a couple of strides, and she had now reached the edge of the road, which was a slight bank. And the bank I suppose was between 5 to 10, 6 feet high. And she just bent her knees and sprang from her legs and went straight up that bank and landed on the top. The male, and quite nonchalantly, put one foot in the middle of the bank and stepped up and disappeared. And I sat there in the car, absolutely transfixed. And to my eternal shame, I had a loaded 35mm camera. I could see behind me in the car, and I was too paralyzed to pick the car to pick it up. I'd take any more that I could win it. It's too late and anyway. So how long did I see these creatures? Possibly as long as 14 seconds, probably around 11 seconds. It doesn't sound very long, but if you do things reasonably well, watch a lot of things at the time of action. Did they have big feet? Not noticeably so. Were they very big? Again, not noticeably so. How much taller than me? I'm only about 5'9", the male. And the female was considerably small. I would say about 4 inches small. They made no sound. I discerned no smell. And they just disappeared. I carried on driving, and our friend, Mr. Perez over here, asked me what time it was I saw the next car. And the next car I saw was probably about 15 minutes later on the outskirts of the city. I was stone sober. I hadn't had a drink for 2 days. I'd like you to know that. My wife protested that fact. Forever. That's happy to help. That's happy to help. And we went there. And I said aloud at the time, "Did you see that? That was incredible." And she said, what? And I said, "Look, there's 2 Sasquatch, and they walk right across the road here." I went back to sleep. I took it right. And the best thing I could do when I got to the motel in Waiter, I sat down, had a drink of water, and took a deep breath and sketched what I had seen. And that is the reproduction of the sketch, and I'm indebted to John McGee. I sent a copy of the original to him many years ago. He's very faithfully preserved it, and my sketch has not survived, or at least I can't find it at the moment, moved to new premises 5 years ago. So we're indebted to John Green for the years. A lot of people say, "Well, have you been back?" Well, I've been back to Pullman to take a supplementary course in this with Pat Farrell's widow and one of his former pupils. They've got a lot of courses for me to brand, and I've done that, but I've never been back to the exact location. I would very much like to go. And I wonder why, with all these sightings and all this thing going on, we have a natural resource here in Canada, and nobody is doing anything about it. They are doing wilderness trips to look at the Comodo bear. And recently, there was an article, I think in National Geographic, people suddenly realized we have a white bear. And we've had these things, and nobody's doing anything about it. And we've got loggers who will be moaning that they're out of business because we're stopping them cutting wood, forests, things like that. And I wonder to myself, why, if we have all these experienced woodsmen, why we can't organize a sort of Sasquatch safari and get some seed money from the provincial government, because they're the people who, first of all, allow them to go cutting wood in the first place and ruin the environment. So why don't we organize something like that and run trips? Because there's a group here, they advertise in Toronto, and they bring people all the way from Toronto out here to run around the River Zodiac off Vancouver Island, going to Princess Royal Island to look at the Comodo bear. I don't know how many bears they see, how many they photograph, and they're sure they charge $3,000 to do it. So somebody's making some money out of that somewhere. So if we bring out the Comodo bear, why can't we do that in Sasquatch? So that's my story, ladies and gentlemen. It's not very long. It's not very thrilling. But the one thing that happened afterwards was that you get letters from all over the place. You get cranky people phoning you up, wanting to photograph you and do all kinds of things. Other people are doing now. That being my face. And this man in the United States, he sent me a detailed questionnaire. Had I seen any red eyes? Had I seen any eyes looking at him out of the dark? And the answer was no, I haven't seen any red eyes. I haven't seen anything like that. And I had any yelling or growling. No, I hadn't heard anything like that at all. It's kind of disappointing, I suppose, really. And I got in conversation with him eventually, and he was quite an incredible private investigator, and I've lost track of him, and I haven't spoken to him for many years, but I do know he lived in the vicinity of Baltimore. And he sent me a tape. Now, turn that thing off. Turn the tape off. Turn that recording device off. I don't want people recording this because I can't guarantee that it's correct, that it's a real thing. So I'm going to try to show you.
Of years ago.
You did?
But go ahead. I tell you where the tape comes from.
Right. I'm glad to know that because
Yeah.
I've been puzzled by the thing ever since you came. I'm not getting anything.
Mental learning. Larry Lund.
Yes? This is why I don't want people broadcasting it and recording it and then playing it back later because it is.
Very quiet stuff.
Yeah.
But hard.
He came. Oh, we're not getting anything at the moment.
Could put it over.
No, it goes on for quite a while. You sure you got the last time? I don't mind if you shoot.
Give that around for the receivers.
Yeah, we know where that tape comes from. Ray Wallace.
Very well.
You know, we got contacts all over North America, so you mention a name, you sounds and this and that. We all know about it. Robert here, he listened to it. The fellow,
The thing that he told me was that this had been recorded by a man in the Smokish Mountains who had found a sheltered hollow and they had propagated a series of bullfrogs that had been put into this hollow as a food source. And he'd also got some small deer. And I wondered where he got the small deer. And the only thing I could think of was the Florida Keys. And I thought that would be too big and too expensive a project to begin. And the other thing that bothered me was the recording microphone being sort of stuck in front of the picture. And it's not going to stand there and obliging the fellow into a microphone. But the thing that really got me was that the amount and volume that how long it continued to scream. And I had a couple of contacts who worked for Workers' Compensation Board in Ontario. And I said to them, what do you think of this? And they said, well, the only thing I can tell you is that the man who's doing that screaming, or whatever it is who's doing that screaming, has got a powerful pair of lungs, and he must go somewhere around 60 inches around the chest. And that was their only comment.
that guy is big.
Yeah. That was the only thing I could conclude.
Well, you know, it's always good to know where this stuff comes from.
Exactly.
The-
I'm stuck in Ontario. My nearest neighbor is a kilometre away. I have nobody I can talk to about this kind of thing. And he's a book sent for a couple of minutes to my state. And pushing me away. So I don't talk about this the rest of the time. In fact, when John Harvey phoned me up, which was in January, my first thought was, well, there was somebody playing a game here. Somebody trying to have me on here. And I agreed to come because, frankly, I wanted to meet people who had gotten involved as much as I had. And my wife thought it was a good idea for me. And she very generously stayed home and looked after our family of horses. phoned them last night to see if everything was going okay. Here we are. I'm glad to hear that. This is my story. Really without divorce. Take the loans out of it, and I'm not going to be.
Okay, sir. Yes, I would like to say, may I ask if you were paid to come here?
Was I paid to come here?
Yes.
No, nothing was paid but with my hotel room and my expenses. My expenses are paid in.
Yeah, I didn't get anything.
I'm sorry, your negotiating skill is a little slack.
I was going to ask you if, when you had that sighting of the two younger creatures,
Yeah.
or whatever they were, did you have the window rolled down in your car?
No, I did not.
You didn't?
No.
Well, you said that you didn't hear anything or you didn't smell anything.
No.
Well, how could you smell something with the windows rolled up in your car?
Well, precisely, I wasn't driving alone when you smell anything. I was investigating.
Well, I just wondered why you made the statement that
Well,
you couldn't
I didn't smell anything. That was the
smell
fact.
anything.
And the window rolled up, and I was driving along as well.
Okay, well, that was my only question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rennie asked perhaps.
I don't know if you mentioned what time of the day that was,
10:07
and what time of the year,
April. Early April.
and the distance finally from the car to the creatures,
Was about 30 feet.
feet, not meters.
Not feet.
Feet, right.
I mean,
Okay, thank you.
Yes, right, very well. Close range. Yeah, still 50 cattle description there. Now, they were obviously youngish,
yes.
very youngish. Female was built, breast out, drooping, or
Quite good.
get descriptions. Several female Sasquatches, they always.
Well, I look at a lot of females riding horses. We get to know what their figures like underneath all of the clothing. And this picture certainly had quite short breasts. No compliments on that.
Any other questions?
I have a comment and a question, and I'm concerned, and I'm not saying any which way about, I'm not being critical of the report, but perhaps critical of the information. In terms of the observations of the subjects, you seem to be detail-oriented. When we spoke with you at the cafe yesterday, John and I said, I distinctly remember April 8th, 1980. Now wait.
Yes?
We got to John's home, we looked at the copy of the
Yeah.
sketch, it said April 6th.
Correct.
Then I saw the newspaper, the Toronto Star,
Yes.
and it reported April 7th.
Right.
So, I want to know from your point of view, that discrepancy in dates.
The only discrepancy I can tell you is I made the sketch, as I thought, on April the 6th. I was under the impression it was April the 6th. Later, I've looked since, and I've found that the diploma was dated April the 6th. So possibly somebody in Washington State University made the diplomas out ahead of time, miscalculated the date, and gave me the diploma, and I put it in my briefcase and never thought anything about it. And
So, you got the diploma on the 6th of April?
I can't say now. It's 14 years ago. I can't remember whether they gave me the diploma as I left, or they gave me the diploma when we finished doing the actual course itself.
Because the 6th of April is a Sunday.
It was.
I find it hard to believe anything going on.
Then it was the 7th because it was a Monday. I know it was a Monday when we took off.
So, this happened on Monday, but you dated the sketch on April 6th.
Yes, I'm mistaken the date. Okay?
I just wanted to kind of clear that up.
Well, I thought if anybody's going to make any comment about this, they were anything else, because it's ridiculous that people are nitpicking things like that. Probably will. I'm a real stickler for that kind of stuff. Well, I thought, I was honestly under the impression it was April the 6th, it was Monday, it was it definitely was Monday.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just like to make a point here that some people may be wondering why Steve would bring somebody out from Ontario to tell about just seeing something across the road. And the reason is that Mr. Hepworth answers a problem that is forever being raised, and they tell us, oh, well, this person isn't a qualified observer. Well, as head of a chief inspector for our Humane Society, and as a man who's worked in various investigative roles of others to us, there's no question at all that Hepworth is a qualified observer. The second thing is that in many cases, okay, there's nothing wrong with the witness, but they may be seeing something that has been staged. Oh, Mr. Hepworth is describing creatures doing things that no human can do, let alone a human in a fursuit. There is no human that can, from a standing start, just dip its knees and land on its feet or 6 feet higher up. So this is in a way a unique report. This is a report in which there are only two possibilities. Either the man you're listening to is an absolute liar, or else he did see a Sasquatch. Nobody fooled him. There's no question that he's qualified to report accurately what he saw. And there aren't too many cases like that.
Supplemented Mr. Green's very fine supported. I should explain, I'm the only expert or inspector or former inspector or any other way you want to compute it, who has seized and moved a mountain gorilla. I actually had a woman from Ontario who kept a 9-year-old bull gorilla in a garage as a pet. She did. And she called us down there because the gorilla was sick, and she didn't know why the gorilla was sick, and she wanted some veterinary attention. Now, the local vet was a cat and dog man, and he's not going to risk his reputation with a diagnosis on a gorilla, because he's probably never even seen a gorilla unless it was in a zoo, and it wasn't his responsibility. So, and she went down there, and when she couldn't get a response from him, she got very frustrated and threw a brick through his glass door, and she was impetuous that woman. So he was not keen to encounter her again, and we went down there at the request of the dog catcher of people, and I went down and looked at him. I found this big brown muddy eye looking back at me, and I thought, oh, well, it's just a big bear or something. When I actually got into the garage and saw him, I was aghast. It was a gorilla. It was pretty close to 6 foot tall. It weighed about 300 odd pounds. It was heavy. It ran around on its knuckles, and she jolted on it. She used to come home at night. She's so real stiff. She used to come home at night, take her clothes off, and sit in the cage and have her supper with the gorilla, watching roller derby on the television set outside the cage. And she did this every day. And they done it. And you can laugh, but I got photographs of the cage being emptied out. I was carrying a bed out and a night table and the television set and everything else before it was carried out the gorilla as well. And we had control of that gorilla for a week, and we nursed him 24 hours a day, and he still died at the end of the week. And when I first looked at the gorilla, I became very agitated to move him, because I noticed all the classical signs of arsenic poisoning, eczema at his wrists and his ankles, and that's a very strong indication of arsenic poisoning. And when we did a post-mortem on the animal, it had died of calamine poisoning, which is a common rat poison. The only person who would have done that was her boyfriend, who was strangely related to psychiatrist. Now, if you think this story is bizarre, it is. I said to myself, this story deserves to live. Somebody should write this down, and I did. And I put it all into a book, and before I knew what happened, I had about 26 episodes. And I titled the book, The Gorilla in the Garage and Other Stories. And I've written the book of it.
Has that been published?
Yes, it has. Oh, yes. Yes, sir.
Mr. Houston has the last question.
You were, the location of your sighting is kind of interesting, yes. Those rugged areas in Idaho right there, Hell's Canyon,
Yes.
close to the big wilderness in Idaho over there.
Yes.
And close to the Wallowa, Georgia.
Yes.
They're centered pretty good right in the spot right there.
Yes, very true. I remember seeing a lake on my right-hand side as I got to the point where we counted it. And I think it's called Spangler Reservoir. When you look on some maps. But some maps it isn't very far. But I remember seeing it all before. That's all.
I wanted to get some clarification on this point. I remember yesterday I scribbled on my notepad that at the time you said the subject was seen 25, 30 feet away. On the Shirley program, which we saw the other day, we reported that it's 90 feet away.
When we first saw it.
Yeah.
Right. And I reached up 30 feet. Well, I'm going to bars all the time. Okay.
Hey, let's hear it for Mr. Hepworth.
Yeah.
And it's snoring away. Yes, sir.
I just want to mention, Mr. Hepworth mentioned the idea of Sasquatch safaris, that you might like to know that the lady who's just arrived from Elma, Washington, is actually involved in that kind of activity in Washington State. You two should probably get together and
Okay, this afternoon at 2:30 we have Flip Crook, Mr. Rene DeHinden, who I'm sure you'll hear again today, and one other person, I'm not sure, do you know who your other cohort is at 2:30? No? Okay. And tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 we have Dan Perez from Los Angeles, with a couple of other people as well, I'm not sure of them. Red, I've seen that myself. This morning when I woke up, Cheryl woke up.
would you tell those of us who came late who you are, please?
I'm Matthew Lynham. I'm moderating because Stephen couldn't get anyone else.
Say your name again, please.
Matthew Lynham. 2 T's, not that I'm particular. Last name L-Y, N as in Norman, A-M as in mother. And I'm associated with Sasquatch Daze because at 3 o'clock I do a show on the beach, a comedy show on the beach. Not about Sasquatch, it's probably a comedy show. Stephen hire me for free as well. We're going to end the day with Mr. Jim Dugan right here. Jim is from St. Helens, Oregon, not the mountain because it wasn't destroyed. And he is a retired wildlife biologist from the Oregon State Wildlife Commission.
If you're enjoying all this rare and unique content, please show your support by subscribing and leaving comments. Stay safe, stay well.